Hey, it's Craig. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Canadian History X early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. Greetings and welcome to another episode of Canadian History X. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can for $3 a month. Just go to patreon.com/CanadaEHX. You can also donate to the podcast by going to CanadaEHX.com and clicking Donate. I do this full time, and every dollar you give helps keep all of it going. Don't forget, I have two other podcasts out there, Pucks and Cups and From John to Justin, available on all podcast platforms. Today I'm speaking with Camille Hollett-French, who co-created a film called Endemic, which is about a disease that impacts over 200 million people across the planet. The film, which French co-created, premiered at the Slamdance Film Festival as part of the festival's inaugural Unstoppable program for visible and non-visible disabilities from February 12th to 25th. So let's get right to the interview. What have you been up to the past year?
Okay. When did the year start again? And when did 12 months? I don't know. I've been grappling with time. That's what I've been doing. So I did a short film. I directed a short film called Freya that we shot January 2020. And it was, thank God we shot it in January because we did it right before well, I guess a month and a bit before, but there was talk about postponing it, and thank God we didn't. But that was a Harold Greenberg and Creative BC funded short film, and it's a sci-fi-esque tale about a woman and her relationship with social media and the state that in the near future operate as one. And so that's been doing pretty well in the festival circuit. We just won Best Female Director at the Vancouver Short Film Festival and Audience Choice, and our first festival out the gate we won Best Live Action Short at Calgary International Film Festival. And it's been awesome. And then after that, because of Freya, actually, Freya played at a festival in New York called Imagine Science Film Festival, where we won the Avant-Garde Award, which was really exciting. And during that festival, I was part of a competition called the Symbiosis Filmmaking Competition, where because of the pandemic, it was worldwide for the first time, which was really cool. And they chose 6 filmmakers and 6 scientists worldwide to make a film about science. And I ended up partnering with a research scientist whose work is all around endometriosis, which I was diagnosed with in 2016. And we ended up making a film in 8 days from concept to completion that just premiered at Slamdance Film Festival last week, and it is playing until the 25th.
Nice.
And I'm on a show of a role on a show. I come and go on Big Sky right now, which is David E. Kelly's latest show. And I don't remember right before the pandemic hit, I think it was, I did a quick stint on Nancy Drew, and then like a year/1 minute happened. And I woke up one day, and then I started on Big Sky, and then I think that's like, I don't know. What time is it? What day is it? I'm still getting that. Are you getting that still?
Oh, yeah. It's it's kind of crazy that we're all almost at the end of February. And, it seems like even just January 1st was a million years ago. Like
Oh my God.
It's so crazy. You actually answered my second question, which was what led you to make the film that you'd mentioned. So I guess tell me a bit about the film.
So it's called Endemic, and it's a live action meets animation, doc meets mock about endometriosis, which is a chronic illness that affects 1 in 10, which is pretty damn high. 1 in 10 menstruating people, women, non-binary, trans folks, globally. And it's got the same prevalence as diabetes, but it gets the same amount of funding as valley fever. So that was interesting to learn from EPAC, from our research. And so it's this like snarky, satirical take on what the hell is going on that creates this reality of, on average 10 years of somebody being diagnosed. And for the most part, because it takes that long to get doctors to believe you, and you have to go through that many doctors before they stop just brushing off your pain. It's a women's quote unquote disease. And so it hasn't been taken as seriously. And so we wanted to approach it from the perspective of like the humor that Ipek, who's my co-creator, Ipek Ansari, and we wanted to approach it with our humor. And very early on, as in like the first 6 minutes when we met on the Thursday night, and it was due the following Friday, I believe. I think it was Friday. Anyway, whatever day it was. And yeah, like very early on, we're like, oh, we have the same sense of humor. And we found that like we actually kind of ended up making fun of science films because traditionally they're not as accessible to a broader range of the public. However, we have found that we do think it's a niche that understands what like our exact sense of humor, because there are times when people watch the film and they just don't get it when they're like, oh, we really like the testimonials at the end. And it's like you're just gonna brush over the whole, like all the other parts, like the
everything else,
uterus, the like person in a human-sized uterus costume playing like the real life version of the animated uterus. Like you're gonna brush over that. And then so anyway, but yeah, we're excited about it because it's just the first step, and this is a short film that really opened the doors for what we want to do, and we're looking for funding for a feature or series. More.
Now it impacts 200 million people worldwide, which is not a small number. Why do you feel that it's not known better among the general public?
I would say because you get a bunch of like angry, crampy women in a room, and people are just going to listen to them less. Pretty much. Well, from my experience, like I first heard the word endometriosis after I had fainted when I was 18 from cramps and been taken to the ER in an ambulance. And once they realized I wasn't dying, because that's what the ER is for, and that's this like, it's really hard for endo warriors, as they're called, because when they're in such an extreme pain, they go to the emerge to be like, help me figure it out, or like I have nothing else to do, like how do I move, am I dying? Because you really start to think sometimes like, am I dying, are my insides imploding right now? And so going to the ER is tough because they make sure you're not dying and send you on your way, and then like sometimes with your specialist appointment in 4 months or whatever it is. But yeah, so the first time I had heard about endometriosis, I was 18 and in the ER, and when we were leaving, the doctor was like, my mom had come to meet me, and the doctor was like, oh, it sounds like you could have endometriosis, but there's no point really in finding out because there's no cure for it. So no point in finding out, but hey, do you have someone special in your life? And I was like, yeah, like my high school sweetheart, whatever. And she was like, oh, because have you thought of having a baby? Because having a baby makes it go away, which is A, ridiculous, B, not debunked, but like very clearly now understood as not a good solution, and C, like just what the fuck. And oh, sorry, I don't can I do I
oh yeah it's fine, no
okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that, and then it took years after that of doctors, like even it took me so long to find a doctor when I moved from Toronto to Vancouver. I've lived in Vancouver now for about 4 years, I think. And one of the doctors I was trying, that I, you go on a wait list, or you like put your name somewhere, and then you get a call or you get an email being like, this clinic's now accepting patients. You're like, oh my God, amazing, I'm gonna have a doctor, like let's celebrate. And then you go and you're waiting for this appointment. This is just for a GP. And this one doctor just like completely gaslighted me and was like, I actually cried twice in his and not just like the regular crying, which is frequent for endometriosis patients, like what am I kind of crying, but like full out like, why don't you see me? Why aren't you listening to me? And like I should have told him, I was like, you're a bad doctor. Because he was just like, no, I'm not going to put in the referral for you. Like, I that's my job. I'm the doctor. I decide if a referral needs to go. And anyway, he was an idiot. That's understood. But and not all. And then I found an amazing doctor who helped move along the process here in BC. Because, like I said, I was diagnosed in 2016, and that was in Toronto. And I had gone through the means there. I had randomly stumbled upon a walk-in clinic doctor at Queen and Spadina across from the McDonald's. People in Toronto know what I'm talking about. And kind of a crazy place, but I found this incredible doctor there. And she had put me on the first steps to be diagnosed in 2016. And then when you move to another city, and it's kind of like you have to start all over. And so, and that's for anyone with chronic illnesses, really. And that's also something that, is a big goal of ours in making this film, is that, yes, we want to shed light on endometriosis, but we also, like, it's a model, as EPEC would say, with her science tuck. She'll be so proud of me that I used her science tuck, with like a model that can be transferred to other chronic illnesses. And what that is like, listen to the patient, use the patient. The patient is the most underutilized resource in healthcare. That was Dr. Warner Slack who said that, and he was a pioneer for believing that. Crazy, right? A pioneer for listening to patients. I don't know if I answered your question, but I did.
You did, actually. You did. In regards to the film, you mentioned it took you 8 days to put together. What was the process with making the film, and how did you come to work with EPEC?
Oh my God, that was a trip. I have to thank my ADHD for that, because okay, here's another story. It all kind of converged at the same time, but I found out that after 34 years of not just like, oh my God, it's so funny, you're forgetful and you say things like really fast. It's been a hard go at different times because of my ADHD, and I didn't know that was even an option. And after 34 years of like wondering why I am the way I am, I stumbled upon it through a series of conversations with my doctor and YouTube videos. Thanks, YouTube. And I was finally diagnosed like right before the competition, and they put me on an ADHD medication that I was like getting used to at the time, but it made me like, basically my brain worked as fast as it usually did, like kind of like all over the place, but it streamlined it. And so I slept like 3 hours a night that whole week, and I was like, okay, cool, what's going on next? I'm ready. I hope. No, okay. We haven't won anything yet for the film, and I was like, oh my God, am I gonna have our awards taken away because I was taking drugs while we were making the film? But okay, so EPAC. I should also say that I also had coffee today, so that's why, like regular coffee. But EPAC and I met because a couple of days before, or a week or whatever before the competition, they gave each person a little bit more info on each participant, and then we got to put in what our first choices were and such. And EPEC and I were each other's first choices, and because I saw that on the site you could read beforehand what people's areas of expertise were, and she mentioned mobile health learning. And for people who don't speak science talk, what that means is like apps, basically. And so that's not all she does, but she works on this really cool app called Fendo, where patients all over the world, they have about 12,000 participants right now. It's like a study, but it's an ongoing study, and patients download this app and they track their progress, they track their symptoms, they track all these different things. And then they use this information to put data together. It's very cool. And it was started by one of her colleagues at the Data Science Institute at Columbia University called Dr. Noemi Eladad, and she is my hero. She's so cool. And she herself is an endo warrior. And so she created this app because of that through their organization called Citizen Endo. So check it out. And I learned more about the fact that she did work around endometriosis through that extra info that they sent. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know she was studying endo. This is crazy. So anyway, and then I think somewhere in my application, I'd written something about chronic illness and endometriosis, and she saw that too, I believe. And then we got partnered. And so we met on the Thursday night, and like immediately we started just like rapping off each other and like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And this is all over Zoom and spatial chat, which is a really cool Zoom alternative that makes it feel more like you're in a bar. Because like, have you seen spatial chat yet?
I haven't, no.
It's so cool. So rather than you just being like a still box on the screen, you're in a bubble and you can move your bubble around the room. And as you move farther away from the other bubbles, they get quieter. And as you get closer, so it's like you're in a bar. It's so cool. Yeah. And so, so we started talking, and then by the Friday we had a script written because, so it was crazy because I was crewing up in Vancouver, but I didn't know who I was going to partner with. And when I was crewing up, I was like, but there's a catch. We might come to the day and I might be like, I don't need you. Sorry. Bye. And so people were hesitant naturally because they're like, well, how do I plan? And I was like, I don't know, wing it. And we ended up working with somebody named Tanya Jade, who's an actor, writer, director, works behind the camera. And this was her first time DPing. And she was the one person out of all the DPs, potential DPs that I met, who was like, so you mean like we don't know? And I was like, no. And she was like, that's so scary. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, okay, I'm going to think about this. And then she called me the next day and she was like, yeah, okay, thought about it. Okay. Yeah. Let's do it. Because everybody else was like you could see the fear come over their face. And they were just like, how do I do this? So anyway, that was a really great match. And yeah, I was crewing up on my side, telling people like, we don't know anything, but we're going to shoot on the Saturday, because I knew that we would have to shoot on the Saturday. We would have to make decisions and shoot on the Saturday to get it all done. And so, yeah. And then we wrote this script, and then there was like a uterus, and there was like a real life uterus and an animated uterus. And one of my very dear friends, Phoebe Titus, she's a great animator and colorist, and she's one of our co-producers on the project as well. She came on fairly early because she's so multifaceted that I was like, Phoebe, I don't know what I'm going to need you for, but do you want to do this? And she was like, yeah. And then another very dear friend, Lucy Allen, who's also a writer director, she edited the film, and thank God, because she's like the fastest editor in the West and so skilled and talented. And so without her, we wouldn't be able to do it. But they were, so like I kind of had a team on our side, but I knew that I wanted my partner to feel like I wanted it to be a partnership. I didn't want to just like come in and glom all over it. And so I told everybody, this is what I think, but it could all change once I meet my partner. And what, I want to let them in on the decision making. But luckily EPAC was like so easygoing and like, yeah, sure. And then another star is a wardrobe designer that who I collaborate with frequently, Karina Barrow. She's like my fairy godmother, particularly this time because I messaged her, I think on the the Thursday night. And I said, Karina, can you sew me a uterus costume? And she was like, uterus? Like uterus? And I was like, yeah, like uterus. And then the following day she showed up with uterus costume at my door. And so she sews anything. So she sewed it all from scratch. And yeah, so it fell together like that. However, we had this script up until I think the Tuesday. It was a little, it kind of was falling into like the trap of what an endometriosis film can be. Okay, I've been using this term and I don't want to offend anyone who does like these types of films, but the type of film I'm referring to is the interpretive dance, inspirational music type of endometriosis film. And sometimes I like them too. Sometimes I need them too. But we knew we didn't want to make that. And on Tuesday night, we're like, oh shit, like I think we're kind of making that. So I stayed up all night and kind of reworked the idea because everyone else, like EPAC's in New York, we're in different time zones. And so it was probably like 1 a.m. when I realized that. And then, and it was like 4 there. So I stayed up, rewrote some stuff. I went to bed at like 7 or 8. I needed to sleep for two hours. the new Camille, just 2 hours. And so I put a bunch of notes together for Phoebe, Lucy, and EPAC and said, can you guys start on this stuff? Just trust me. Like, I know this is crazy, because we rewrote some of the, like, all the live action, like what was being said, and the voiceover. And basically we rewrote anything, like we were using the same stuff that we shot, but we changed what was around it to give it a different meaning. And when I woke up at I think 10 on the Tuesday and got on Zoom with them, they were all looking at me like they were so uncomfortable. I felt really bad now in hindsight. But we all knew that it was like the right choice because basically like the film was cut already. And then Lucy was like, oh, I have to go recut everything. And EPAC did all of the voiceover in her closet in New York City, and had never done any sort of recordings before. And so she was just like in and out of her closet the entire time. Yeah. And we used an approach, because there's a filmmaking competition. It worked so well in relation to endometriosis. We used an approach that was much like endometriosis care. And what it was the fastest, simplest way, even if it's not necessarily the right way. And we think that really fed into the aesthetic of just, well, you would know this in Canada. EPAC didn't know the reference, but one of our comparables, like, references was Body Break.
Okay, yeah.
Body Break. And yeah, so we really wanted like that dated aesthetic, because the data is dated. The medical options are dated. The mindsets are dated all around endometriosis. And so anyway.
What do you hope people get out of watching the film?
It's always a tricky question for me, because I'm like, I don't know, watch it and you tell me. Like some douchey filmmaker. I would say, like, this is what EPAC always says it really nicely. This is a conversation starter for sure, because we wanted to give like the tip of the iceberg. A tagline we were playing with early on was the film to help your boyfriend understand your endometriosis. And then it, like, I don't know, we still use that sometimes a little bit, but it's not as inclusive as we'd like to be, because the reality of it is that it affects so much more than women and just cis straight women. But yeah, we just really want this is the tip of the iceberg, and it's an opener. And so we just want people to, like, we can't go and change a system if the world doesn't know about it. And so few people do. This one time I ended up in the ER, and a female ER nurse, she was probably about like 35, early 40s. She didn't know what endometriosis was. And so, like, that is the reality. I'm not exaggerating. And, as certain celebs start coming out being like, okay, I have this condition, like Whoopi Goldberg and Lena Dunham and Keke Palmer, I believe, was the last one, the most recent. Hillary Swank is currently suing SAG insurance, or their insurance through SAG. I don't know what the company's called, but it's not exactly clear as to whether it's endometriosis or not. But she's suing them because she's been having ovarian cyst issues, and they don't want to cover it because to them it just falls into fertility. And she's like, no, not like, what about my life? And so, these conversations are starting in different ways, but they're not nearly as far along as they should be. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to level the playing field and be like, okay, here's some more information for you. And yeah, science, illness, blah, dry, whatever, like, maybe laugh a little and then retain some of this information. But it was also important for us to laugh, because we're not, like, people with chronic illness or disabilities, like, we're not always just like weeping in the corner, like, we like to laugh too. And we like to, we like self-deprecating humor and making fun of ourselves and laughing at times. So we thought it was important to try to offer that as well.
What's the response been to the film so far?
Either it's hilarious, or I really liked the testimonials at the end. So it's like definitely on either end of the spectrum, which is
Right.
great. Like, I love that kind of stuff, because what that means is that nothing is on the fence about it, right? And more specific. And so, yeah, I mean, when I got the call from Taylor Miller at Slam Dance, who's the Unstoppable Programs director, Slam Dance Miami's director, she was like, Taylor is an endo warrior herself of more than 25 years. And, we've talked about that a little bit. And she was like, that's like, oh my God, it was so funny. We laughed and we laughed. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And she said that I think maybe one of the best things you want to hear. And it was that there's nothing, she said she's never seen anything like this about endometriosis. And so that to us made us feel like, okay, maybe we're on the right path here. And yeah, like we're just excited, to see what happens. This is our first festival, and it'll be really interesting because there are going to be people. We did it like an audience. So after the competition, we spent an extra 2 weeks just like tightening up some voiceover, and we did an audience feedback questionnaire. And through that, the title changed because it used to be called Parasist. And we decided that endomic was so much better. When we read when I did it, I'm sure EPAC already knew the definition because she's a scientist. But when I read the actual definition of endemic, that it's a condition that occurs in a specific group of people or population, we're like, oh my God, endemic, endomic, like, wow. And so a lot of people through the audience feedback wanted the title to be changed because they didn't quite get it, and fair enough. But in that, some people were like, oh, you have to be careful not to ostracize the doctors. And I was like, why? Why the fuck do I have to care about ostracizing the doctors? They've ostracized me. And it was funny because it falls very much into the same, like, well, not all men. And it's like, okay, great. Well, if you're not in that group of the bad men, then you don't have anything to worry about. And it's the same thing for the doctors. It's like, well, if you're not in that group of the bad doctors, then you don't have anything to worry about. Like, we're not talking about all doctors. And we did end up interviewing my wonderful GP, who's been like incredible, Dr. Rachel Vogler. She's just changed my life in so many ways because she's worked with me and helped me, like actually helped me. And she spoke in the film and talked about, how we're not nearly as far along as we should be. And so there are doctors like her out there. So we get that reception sometimes. And I think from the science aspect or the academic world, I'm really curious to see what we get from that. Because it might just be that like, oh, So I don't know. We'll see. But we've had such a great support from Imagine Science, and Alexi Gambi is like amazing. He's a festival director and a filmmaker himself, and he just made a film that won the Sloan Award at Sundance called, I believe it's Monarch of Butter. I wish I remembered. But anyway, he's been really amazing, and he's a scientist or comes from a science background, I believe, and a filmmaker. And so, like we've had some really great support, and we're just, I don't know. There's so many times that I would like call my mom just so frustrated, like, I don't know what this body is that I'm living in. And she would like, she's in Ontario and I'm in BC, and the conversation at some point is always just like, oh, you need to make a film about this. And I'm fortunate enough and lucky enough to have been able to do it, which is so cool. So yeah, I love film, and yeah.
And what comes next for it? Like you said, more festivals or?
So many awards and so much money. I want to buy a mansion from this short film. That's what I'm going to do. I hope. We're like, this is our first festival and we're in it right now. So we're waiting to hear back about other ones. And, we're looking for people in high places with power who want to support the endeavor and who want to support getting the word out there and support the creation of more content that's more accessible, i.e. like a feature film. And yeah, so we're constantly looking for opportunities like that, looking for funding, looking to connect with other people who have similar mindsets and who really care about the subject matter and who believe that a better life is available for endometriosis patients and endo warriors worldwide. So that's the goal. We want to go after the system. We are coming for it.
And where can people see it online, or is it they have to wait for it?
Yeah, so right now, until February 25th, it'll be screening at the Slamdance Film Festival. Festival passes are $10, down from the regular $350. It's the most accessible festival yet. We are part of the Unstoppable program, which is the first time Slamdance has ever done a program for filmmakers with disabilities and films about disabilities. And you can just get your pass at slamdance.com and search Endomic, and you can give us 5 stars if you'd like. That would be great. And yeah, and you can watch it that way. And then also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. It's all the same handle, A Bloody Crisis. And we've also got our website, abloodycrisis.com. You can add yourself to the mailing list, and we'll let you know the next opportunity to see them.
I hope you enjoyed that interview, and if you did, please leave a rating and review. If you like, you can reach me through email at craig@canadaehx.com. You can also visit my website where you'll find hundreds of articles on Canada's history as well as all my podcast episodes. Just go to canadaehx.com. And don't forget, you can support the podcast through Patreon. There are multiple tiers to choose from, all with great benefits. You can support the podcast for as little as $3 a month, just like all of these wonderful patrons have, and I apologize if I mispronounce any names. Randy McCallum, Diane Wade, Lorianne Kirby, Gary Dolovich, Nick Zinri, Pamela Elder, Shannon Marshall, Clinton Martinez, Dimitri Shove, Aaron O'Hara Myers, Robert Dunseith, Todd Casey, Catherine Roy, Luke S., J.P. Bear, Jason Hall, Phil Maynard, and Iris Gray. If you want, you can find me on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/CanadianHistoryX. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is Craig Baird, CraigBeard. And you can find me on Instagram. Just go to Bairdo37. Thanks, and we'll see you again next time.